The goal of Subi East is to deliver about 2,700 new dwellings in total across two main precincts, the Oval Precinct around the former Subiaco Oval Stadium and the 1909 Precinct, the PMH hospital site named after the year PMH opened. From a property market perspective, adding a lot of apartments could increase supply in the area, which might moderate price growth for units in Subiaco in the medium term, which I expect it will. A good thing for buyers looking for something more affordable in a blue chip location. In the long run, if Subi East is done well, it should enhance property values in the vicinity because of the improved amenities and vibrancy. Stage 1 of the Bentley project has already commenced, civil works, and in the first stage they're creating 46 residential lots, 2 larger development sites likely for future apartment buildings or townhouses, and 3 new public open space areas.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management, sales and buyers agency servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here's your host, Jared Mann.
Welcome back to Perth Property Insider for part 2, where I'm looking at the supply of new dwellings that are going to be coming on or planned to be coming on over the next decade. I'm going to look at the timing for how they're rolling out. And in today's episode, I'm focusing on the infill planned developments and how they're going to impact the surrounding suburbs. It's going to be a really interesting episode. So let's get stuck into it, shall we? And talk about urban infill. Redevelopments in established areas. There's several key infill projects adding new housing over the next decade, and I wanted to list them. We're going to look at Subiaco, Bentley, and Fremantle suburbs, namely Beaconsfield. So these are going to bring thousands of new homes right into our existing suburbs, changing the look and feel of those areas. We have got Subiaco East, which they're doing an inner city renewal at Subiaco Oval and PMH site. So there's a few places in Perth that carry as much nostalgic weight as Subiaco Oval, very few places. And the old Princess Margaret Hospital, both of them, everyone can relate to. Oh, well, most people have been along to a game at the Subiaco Oval or visited someone in the hospital there over the last decades. So these sites are rich with history, footy games, children's healthcare, but in recent years, they've sat mostly dormant after those functions moved away. With the AFL now at Optus Stadium and the new Perth Children's Hospital in Nedlands, enter the Subi East redevelopment, a plan to rejuvenate a 35-hectare area east of Subiaco into a vibrant residential and mixed-use community. This project is spearheaded by Development WA and it's going to unfold in stages over roughly the next 20 years. So the goal of Subi East is to deliver about 2,700 new dwellings in total across two main precincts, the Oval Precinct around the former Subiaco Oval Stadium and the 1909 Precinct, the PMH hospital site named after the year PMH opened. So these homes are mostly going to be apartments and townhouses, bringing an estimated 4,000 new residents into the area. And that's a significant population boost for Subiaco, which will support local businesses and help revitalise what was, after the AFL, after the Oval's closure, a pretty quiet corner of the suburb. So the first cab off the rank is the Oval Precinct, and in mid-2023, a developer was selected to build the initial apartment complexes on lots 1 and 2 Subiaco Oval site. And these two lots alone are expected to deliver around 430 apartments across buildings up to 30 stories high in one case and 11 stories in the other. They're going to be mixed use with some retail or commercial at the ground level, and they're integrating design elements to pay homage to Subiaco Oval's heritage. So, for example, they're retaining the historical gates and pricing parkland where the Oval, or they're placing a parkland where the Oval turf used to be. About 12% of the dwellings in the first stage will be set aside as affordable housing. So there's a lot going on in that pocket. So roughly 15% of the 1,000 Oval Precinct dwellings will be social housing, which is a notable contribution to affordable housing in a traditional pricey area. What's compelling about Subi East is how it knits into the urban fabric. The location's fantastic, only 2 kilometres from the CBD, walking distance to train stations, Subiaco on the Fremantle line and West Leederville on the Joondalup line, and the adjacent to key hubs like Subiaco's Rockaby Road Cafe Strip and the West Leederville St John of God Hospital area. The master plan emphasises creating new public open spaces, playgrounds, and sports facilities on site. So it's not just about high rises, it's adding a community amenities and that both new and existing residents can enjoy. For example, a big new park has already been landscaped where Subiaco Oval once stood, complete with retained hill seating and even the old coach's box as a quirky feature. They've also preserved some heritage buildings from the PMH era, so they're trying to keep some of that character. And over the next 5 years, you'll see Subi East really take shape. By around 2028 or so. Those first apartment towers at the Oval should be built and occupied, bringing new life to the area. Simultaneously, the PMH site, 1909, will likely undergo its redevelopment phase. Plans call for about 1,000 dwellings on the old hospital grounds across up to 6 apartment sites. We can anticipate cranes on that skyline as buildings come down. Indeed, much of PMH has been demolished already and new ones go up with. So within 10 years, a significant portion of the 2,700 homes should be delivered if the market absorbs them at the expected pace. So for Subiaco as a whole, the impacts will be substantial and mostly positive. New residents mean more patronage for local shops, restaurants and services, injecting energy and spending into the Subiaco town. And development will also help meet demand for housing close to the city, offering an alternative to the suburban sprawl that we've just spent half an hour covering. So from a property market perspective, adding a lot of apartments could increase supply in the area, which might moderate price growth for units in Subiaco in the medium term, which I expect it will. A good thing for buyers looking for something more affordable in a blue chip location. In the long run, if Subi East is done well, it should enhance property values in the vicinity because of the improved amenities and vibrancy. Think about East Perth's redevelopment in the 1990s or Claremont Oval's recent apartments. Once established, those become sought-after addresses, and there might be some concerns from locals about increased traffic or the character of Subiaco changing. There always is when density increases, but efforts are being made to ensure it fits Subi, and for instance, tapering building heights at the edges and keeping plenty of open space and respecting heritage all seem to be the right framework in place. So one of the fun aspects, the iconic Subiaco Oval scoreboard and playing surface have been retained for community use, and you can literally go up and kick a footy on the old centre square as all the, our AFL greats did in the past. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's take a look at one of the other major infill residential hubs that is planned for Bentley. This is from the Bromley Towers. They're transforming it into a new residential hub. So Bentley has got significant infill in progress. It's about 8 kilometres from the city. It's near Curtin University and Technology Park, and it's a highly accessible location. So historically, Bentley was known for a large public housing complex called Brownlee Towers, a set of 1960s high-rise flats that became quite notorious over time. So those have been demolished, and in their place, Bentley 360 redevelopment project, often just called the Bentley Redevelopment, is underway to create new modern residential community. So the Bentley Redevelopment area covers approximately 30 hectares of land, and the plan is to transform this underutilised government land into a vibrant community with between 800 and 1,000 new homes in total. Importantly, this isn't being built as a big apartment complex. Rather, the vision emphasises medium density housing, a mix of terrace houses, townhouses, and some low to mid-rise apartments. The idea is to have a diversity of housing types to cater to families, single students and seniors, and to integrate with the surrounding suburb, which is mostly single houses. So, stage 1 of the Bentley project has already commenced, civil works. And in the first stage, they're creating 46 residential lots, 2 larger development sites likely for future apartment buildings or townhouses, and 3 new public open space areas. These initial works, including site remediation and installing roads and utilities, are expected to finish by late 2025. So we can anticipate that by 2026, some of those first lots will be built on perhaps display homes or the first residents moving in. Upon full completion, maybe by the early 2030s, Bentley's new precinct will feature tree-lined streets, parks, playgrounds, and a variety of modern homes, and the draft master plan ensures at least 1 in every 7 homes across the precinct will be dedicated to affordable housing, continuing Bentley's tradition of inclusion, but in a far more mixed and integrated way than the old housing estate was. So they're also allocating about 12% of the land to public open space. Think pockets of parks, play areas, and sports courts. And given the proximity to Curtin Uni, one could imagine some of these new homes might attract students or university staff as well, and possibly there will be purpose-built student accommodation sites or just rentals that become popular with that crowd. So for the surrounding community, this redevelopment, I think, is going to be pretty significant because the old Brownlee Towers site was frankly an eyesore and had social issues. So replacing it with a well-planned, attractive neighbourhood should boost property values in Bentley and nearby St James and Wilson. It essentially turns a problem spot into a desirable address, and we've seen similar outcomes in other cities when dated public housing blocks are redeveloped. Think Sydney's Green Square or parts of Melbourne's Carlton. Of course, ensuring existing public housing tenants are cared for in this transition is important, and many were relocated from Brownlee when it was demolished, and some may return in the new housing units when built. But overall, the area's reputation stands to improve significantly. I mean, I like to think of places like Balga that's been redeveloped here from having significant public housing to now being a really attractive spot and desirable spot to live. Certainly it's come a long way. So in the next 5 years, expect Bentley 360 to partially be built out, maybe a few hundred homes finished by 2030. And if the market uptake's good, in 10 years, it should be nearing completion with a fully established community. The government included Bentley as one of its key urban renewal efforts to boost housing supply in the metro area, so there's a support at higher levels for this. They even formally declared it as a redevelopment area in 2024, putting it under Development WA's authorities similar to Subiaco to streamline planning and attract investment. From a listener's perspective, why care about Bentley? Well, if you're looking to live relatively close to the city in a brand new home, these sorts of infill projects are golden opportunities because you get modern construction and design, but without the long commute from outer burbs. And Bentley's new housing will also broaden options in the Vic Park area, which has become quite trendy. Not to mention, being near a major university means rental demand could be steady if you're an investor, and students always need accommodation. It'll be interesting to see the architecture and style. Early indications are a focus on sustainability and community feel, possibly with features like community gardens or shared spaces given contemporary trends. So a quick note about the connectivity. Bentley is well served by buses, including Circular, Curtin Cat Bus and other routes to the city. And there's also a proposal for a future public transit link, possibly light rail or rapid bus to Curtin Uni that would run through Bentley. If that ever comes to fruition, it could add even more value to the area. Even now, being 8 kilometres out means a short drive or Uber to the CBD or bike ride for the active. All in all, Bentley's transformation will likely turn into a sought-after residential pocket, shedding its old image completely. So I think that's going to be a big game changer for Bentley and definitely worth watching.
Just real quick before we continue on with the episode, are you getting my email updates yet? If you're not, you're missing out on our suburb intelligence reports, which we tailor and prepare for your individual suburbs of interest, showing advanced stats and insights. Must get onto those. And I also send out exclusive invitations to our events, including webinars, sundowners, and workshops. So if you're not getting those, head on over to investorsedge.com.au/join and make sure you're receiving my email updates.
Beaconsfield, Fremantle, the LeFroy Road Renewal. So travelling now to the southwest, let's discuss Beaconsfield, a suburb just inland from South Freo. Here's an exciting project called LeFroy, also known as the heart of Beaconsfield, is underway targeting a 14-hectare precinct that includes a site of the former Challenger TAFE, the old Davis Park public housing area. This is another major infill development that will rejuvenate an area with a mix of new housing and community amenities. The LeFroy precinct in Beaconsfield is set to deliver up to 700 new dwellings across the 14-hectare site. And this is going to range from standalone home sites to apartments and townhouses, so a real variety. And about 20% of the new housing is earmarked for affordable or social housing, aligning with government policy to include diverse housing options. Construction's already in progress as of 2025, and civil works have commenced on the former TAFE site, preparing it for new housing. On that portion, they anticipate around 155 new dwellings will be built. And impressively, it's only 2.5 kilometres from Fremantle and the coast. So for those unfamiliar, that's a prime location, very close to South Beaches, cafes and Fremantle train line. And the first lots from the TAFE site are expected to be released by sale by the end of 2025. Not sure if they've come on yet, with land titles by late 2026. So we could see the first new homes under construction there within a couple of years. And meanwhile, across the road at Davis Park, an older cluster of 1950s and 60s era public housing units is being demolished as part of the renewal. In its place, they plan to build 110 new social and affordable housing to replace the outdated ones. So that ensures that current public housing tenants can eventually be rehoused in brand new homes in the same area, just vastly improved. So the key element of the LeFroy plan is creating a neighbourhood centre at the corner of South Street and 5th Ave. They've just released 3 commercial lots there to anchor what will be the LeFroy neighbourhood centre. It could include a supermarket, special retail shops, cafes, medical services, essentially a local shopping hub for residents. Excitingly, that centre is also planned to have some residential on top and alongside, up to 170 dwellings, including at least 30 social housing units. So picture something like a mixed-use development where you might have apartments, have a grocery store, a chemist, etc. This is greatly going to increase the amenity in Beaconsfield, which currently doesn't have a major shopping centre within the suburb. So by the time LeFroy is complete, let's say by mid-2030s, that area of Beaconsfield will be transformed. It'll go from being a somewhat tired pocket with an old TAFE campus and a dated housing to a modern, inclusive neighbourhood with tree-lined streets, new parks, shops, and a mix of housing types. The plans emphasise integrating the new development with existing community and improving pedestrian links so that it isn't disconnected estate, but rather blends into Beaky, as the locals call Beaconsfield. So retaining mature trees and sustainable design are also highlighting, which is great in keeping Fremantle's green and eclectic character. For Fremantle in general, this development's quite important because the greater Fremantle area hasn't seen a lot of large-scale new housing supply in recent years outside of some apartment projects in the city centre and North Coogee. So bringing 700 dwellings to the market here will provide more opportunities for people to live close to Fremantle's attractions and potentially ease some pressure on housing in the area. Established property owners in Beaconsfield and South Freo will probably welcome the uplift. Typically, new amenities like a supermarket and beautified streets boost everyone's property values. There could be some short-term disruptions during construction, but the end result should raise the profile of that part of Beaconsfield. So also by adding density on South Street, which is a transit corridor with frequent buses, it's aligning it with the broader push to have more people near public transport and jobs. And looking 5 years out, I'd expect a good chunk of the TAFE site housing to be up by then and possibly the neighbourhood centre built or underway. And in 10 years, the whole LeFroy precinct could be essentially done, barring some later stage townhouses. We'll see families move in as well as downsizers. It's a great spot for empty nesters who want a lock and leave unit near Freo amenities. And importantly, the local social housing being brand new and mixed in will likely improve the quality of life for those residents and reduce past social issues. So, station precincts and the transit orientated development across Perth. I did a whole episode on the development plans around the 10 train stations. I'm not going to recap it all, but I wanted to mention it here to go back and check it out because that's the other major redevelopment in infill areas that's going to be centered around the 10 train stations. I'm already starting to take note of when I'm appraising a client's property, just to mention it to them. If they're within 800 metres of one of those train stations, could see significant improvement in values over the coming few years. So I would definitely be keeping that a property if you've got something in those. Now let's wrap this up. I'm going to wrap up everything I've spoken about across episode 1 and now episode 2. Key takeaways and what to watch for. So Perth's entering a significant growth phase. There's been that much pressure on supply to come that they have had to get the whip cracking with major housing developments both on the fringes and within established areas. So over the next 5 to 10 years, tens of thousands of new homes will be built in places like East Wanneroo, Alkimos, Yanchep, Carnup, Byford, Subiaco East, Bentley and Beaconsfield. And this is a concerted response to our housing needs, aiming to keep home ownership and renting achievable as the population increases. Greenfield expansions. I mentioned we've got East Wanneroo. It's going to open up huge northern corridors. Alkimos and Yanchep in the far north are booming, now fueled by the train line, and proper city centres are being planned. Carnup in the south will start coming to life towards the latter part of this decade. Eventually, the housing is going to be at 10,000 plus people and supporting Rockingham Mandurah region. Byford in the southeast, already fast growing, has now got its rail connection, making it more accessible and prime for future growth. And we've got the infill and urban renewal happening too. So we've got Subi East, which I mentioned is transforming a historical part of Subiaco into 2,700 homes. They're going to create 1,000 dwellings on a site that desperately needed renewal in Bentley. They're improving the suburb and adding housing diversity to Beaconsfield with the LeFroy project adding 700 homes and a new local town centre. And then we've got the station precincts around those 10 train stations. That was Bayswater, Midland, High Wycombe, Morley, Allenbrook, and eventually perhaps Canning Vale. So this means that Perth's growing in more pockets with higher density as well as the urban expansion on the fringes. So impact on established suburbs. To recap, I generally think that more housing supply should help moderate extreme price growth, a relief for those worried about affordability. But each project has nuanced effects. So, for example, existing outer suburbs adjacent to the new estates might face a bit more competition, maybe easing price pressure on older homes, while also benefiting from new infrastructure, which can boost values. And then we've got inner suburbs getting redeveloped like Subiaco, Bentley, which may see increased vibrancy and overall uplift in appeal. And those pockets might feel the growing pains along the way with traffic congestion and disruptions. Overall, I think these projects aim to bring a positive change, turning underutilised areas into thriving communities, which tends to be a win for surrounding property values in the long run. And infrastructure is definitely going to be key to keeping up with the demand, especially in places like East Wanneroo and Carnup. And that's really going to be on the government to deliver. So what to watch over the next decade? Timing and market conditions. Will these developments roll out as fast as hoped? The housing market goes through cycles. So right now there's strong demand in 2025, but if a downturn occurred in the coming years, some projects might slow. Conversely, if population growth surges and keeps up at this rate, then they might have to really push and get them out quicker. So Carnup's launch and East Wanneroo's precinct approvals are evidence of that push already. I would expect affordability measures. So many projects include a portion of social housing. Additionally, the state has funds to encourage infill, like infrastructure fund, to help apartment projects to provide more of that affordable housing. We'll have to see how that translates in real outcomes. So we'll see if there's a noticeable uptick in affordable rentals or homes for key workers in these new areas. Time will tell. We don't want to just go creating high-end enclaves that don't give people the affordable options when they develop these things. Now, there's a fairly negative community response, especially in some of the more established areas, like I mentioned previously, like Bayswater and Subiaco. It's still a bit of a mixed as to how these developments are going to shake out. So people love retaining the character and they don't want the development to ruin that ultimately. So that's where development needs to be cautioned. And in terms of the broader property market, perhaps the most interesting thing to our listeners is how will all this shape Perth's property landscape by 2030? We could see new hotspots emerge. For example, East Wanneroo might by then have a reputation as the place to be for young families, or akin to how Allenbrook was in the 2000s. Alkimos might evolve into a mini city and raise the profile and prices of Perth's far north coastal belt. Inner suburbs like Subi and Vic Park near Bentley could see a diversification of housing stock, leading to more people able to live there, which might moderate prices per dwelling but increase overall activity. If all goes to plan, Perth will have more housing and more variety: apartments near stations, townhouses near centres, family homes in new suburbs, which helps people find something that suits their life stage and budget. So in closing, Perth's development over the next 5 to 10 years is a story of managed growth and opportunity. The projects we've discussed aim to ensure that as Perth grows towards possibly 3 million people and beyond, it does so smartly with new communities that are well planned and older areas that are renewed rather than left to stagnate. So I think that's overall very positive. For residents and property owners, there'll be opportunities to capitalise on these changes, whether it's buying in a growth area early, benefiting from improved infrastructure in your suburb, or simply enjoying the new parks and amenities that are being built nearby. So keep an eye on government announcements, local planning schemes, and on-the-ground progress in those areas. And if you drive by or visit, you'll start to see earthworks turning over the roads, display villages popping up, cranes in sky, old structures getting torn down, physical signs of Perth's growth. So pay attention to how that is rolling out. And I think the next decade's going to be shaped by these very projects. So hopefully this has been an eye-opening set of episodes. Thanks for listening. In future, I'll continue to track some of these developments and how they're evolving, how they're impacting the surrounding areas, like the exact impacts. We need to see how that supply and demand shapes out. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with family and friends. Give us a review. I really appreciate reading your comments on YouTube. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Just a reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature. As we don't know your specific situation, you should always seek professional advice before taking any action. For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. I'll see you in the group.